There's a moment I keep coming back to. I'm maybe 10 years old and I'm sitting in a Pizza Hut booth, the old kind, the kind with dark wood paneling and those amber stained glass lamps that hung low over the tables and turned everything warm and golden. The red plastic cups, the heavy laminated menus, the low hum of an arcade machine in the corner that nobody was playing. My backpack is on the seat next to me, stuffed with Pokemon cards that have bent corners and mysterious stains from God knows what. I'm not thinking about anything important. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm just sitting there, being 10, in a Pizza Hut, on a Friday night that feels like an event. And here's the part that gets me, the part that I can't shake. I was living through the last few years of something that would never come back, and I had absolutely no idea. None of us did. Let me take you back for a second. Not all the way back, just far enough. Far enough to when the internet was still something that happened in your house, not something that followed you everywhere. Far enough to when a Friday night meant going somewhere, not streaming something. Far enough to when the world felt, and I know how this sounds, but it felt unfinished, in the best possible way. The internet made noise before it connected. You know the sound. That dial-up screech, the handshake they called it, like two machines trying to figure each other out. YouTube didn't exist yet. Google was this weird new search engine that people weren't totally sure about. If someone wanted to show you something online, they couldn't just send a link and expect you to open it on your phone in 2 seconds. They had to be there with you, at the computer, together. Half the websites looked like they were designed by a teenager who had just discovered every color in Microsoft Paint and made a very firm decision to use all of them at once. Guest books, hit counters, MIDI music that started playing the second you loaded a page and scared the life out of you at 2 a.m. And honestly, that was part of the charm, because nothing felt like a finished product. Nothing felt like it had been handed down to you by some corporation that had already figured out what you were supposed to want. The internet felt like something all of us were building together, in real time, in our bedrooms, in our living rooms, in computer labs at school. It felt like a frontier. And like any frontier, it had this strange electric feeling that anything could happen next. I grew up in that in-between era. Old enough to remember the before, young enough to grow up inside the after. And I've been thinking a lot lately about what exactly got lost in that transition. Because something did get lost, and I don't think we've ever really talked about it properly. I don't mean this in the nostalgic, things were better when I was a kid way. I want to be clear about that. I'm not romanticizing childhood. I'm not pretending there weren't hard things about that era too. I mean something more specific than that. I mean that something genuinely shifted, some quality in the texture of everyday life, and most of us watched it happen without ever marking the moment it changed. I think about this whenever I walk into a modern fast food restaurant. You know the kind? Gray walls, black furniture, bright white LED lights that make everything feel clinical, like you're eating inside a spreadsheet. Everything has been stripped back, optimized, A/B tested into the most efficient possible version of itself. The menu is a screen. The ordering is a kiosk. The seats are designed to be slightly uncomfortable so you don't stay too long. Now compare that to the places I grew up with. The Pizza Huts that actually looked like pizza places. That low-lit, almost Italian restaurant energy, with the red check patterns and the dark wood and those lamps. The Taco Bells that had a weird, vaguely southwestern feel, like you were eating in an adobe courtyard. The McDonald's with the bright primary colors and the play places, those indoor jungle gyms that were, in retrospect, probably not cleaned nearly often enough, but felt like entering another dimension. None of those places were masterpieces of design. None of them were high art. But they had personality. They had a point of view. They felt like they were made by human beings with some vision, even if that vision was occasionally chaotic. You could tell that a person, or at least a group of people arguing in a room, had made decisions, had said, we want it to feel like this.
There's a term for what happened to those places. It's called portfolio homogenization. And once you know it exists, you start seeing it everywhere. What it means, roughly, is this. In the late 90s and early 2000s, corporate chains started making a quiet pivot. Instead of owning and operating their locations, they shifted toward franchising and outsourcing. And when you outsource thousands of locations and need them all to hit a certain cost target, you lose the thing that made each one distinct. The iconic Pizza Hut building, the red roof, the round windows, those buildings were expensive to maintain. The decor was expensive. So piece by piece, the personality got stripped out. Not because anyone made a decision to make things worse, but because 1,000 small decisions, each individually rational, each trying to cut a cost or improve a margin, added up to something that felt emptied out. And the thing is, this didn't just happen to fast food. Look at movies. Look at how many blockbusters feel like they were produced by the same algorithm. Look at pop music and how a relatively small number of producers are behind an enormous percentage of the hits. Look at the apps on your phone and how they all seem to be converging on the same interface, the same dark mode, the same gesture language. Optimization is good at improving what already exists. What it's not good at is generating the weird, specific human things that make culture feel alive. I've been trying to figure out when exactly I noticed this, and I think it was around the time I started noticing that certain places from my childhood had just quietly disappeared. Not with any fanfare, not with any mourning. They just stopped being there one day, and nobody really said anything about it.
The Blockbuster video store, the mall arcade, the record store where the guy behind the counter would judge your taste in music while ringing you up, and somehow that was fine. That was even part of the experience. The diner with the bad logo and the great pie, the local movie theater with the sticky floors and the weird curtains. One by one, quietly. And in their place, a world that is in so many ways better, more convenient, more efficient, more connected. I know that. I'm not pretending otherwise. I can watch any movie ever made from my couch. I can order food from 100 different restaurants without leaving my house. I can find any song I've ever heard, any book I ever wanted within seconds. But sometimes, efficiency and access aren't the thing you were actually hungry for. Sometimes you were hungry for the specific feeling of sitting in a particular booth, under a particular lamp, on a particular Friday night, with a particular group of people, in a world that felt like it was still being made.
And that feeling, the feeling of being inside something unfinished, something alive, something that hadn't yet been optimized into its final form, that's the thing that's hard to get back once it's gone. I don't think the answer is to pretend we can reverse any of this. The Pizza Hut with the red roof isn't coming back. The dial-up internet isn't something we should mourn in a practical sense. The world moved forward, as it always does, and most of what it moved toward is genuinely better. But I think there's something worth holding on to in the spirit of that era, in the idea that unfinished things have value, that spaces built with personality, even imperfect personality, are worth protecting, that convenience is not the same thing as connection, that optimization has a cost we don't always put on the spreadsheet. Because the things we remember most, the places that show up in our dreams, the moments we find ourselves thinking about for no reason 20 years later, they were rarely the most efficient versions of something. They were the most human versions of something. And I think in some quiet way, a lot of us are still looking for that. If you felt something watching this, if some part of this landed in a place you recognize, this channel is built for you. Every story we tell here comes from that same place, the gap between what we remember and what we've been handed. Subscribe and come back. There are a lot more of these stories where this one came from, and I think you're going to want to hear them.